When I got to the park in 165th, 66, and I saw Kayla, and I saw the musician, and I saw all those young people, it's like sisterhood and brotherhood together. I was like, wow. Because to tell you, to this day, I say, oh my God, how did they find out? I mean, to this day, we talked to Kayla, who was, improvising and with her and singing, and she didn't even know that she's in there in the documentary. I said, oh, you were there. But I think the humanity is when you open, and the other young lady who spoke in the park, they talk about the unity and the significance of us as a part of the African diaspora. The other thing that I think is significant, our young people they're looking for identity. They are looking for identity. You have a lot of mix right now. You have, for example, my 3 daughters, their father is Black Puerto Ricans. So you have all these mixed Mexican, Dominicans, Ecuadorians, and they are looking for that identity. Where am I from? Where do I belong in the United States, in New York City? I think that they gave them a place. From that group, a lot of the young people now are meeting. Let me tell you, they continue to meet. They continue to research and search for themselves. Who am I here? Because when you talked about how they're killing us, they're not looking, I tell people, estamos en el mismo saco. It's not like, oh no, I'm not African American. Oh, yeah, you're not African American, but they're killing you just like they're killing the African Americans. To walk from Washington Heights all the way to East Harlem, usually they march less and less people right to the final place. Oh no, more people were joining us. More and more people were joining us. So that was so beautiful. That was so beautiful.
And all political prisoners, because we vow to be political prisoners fighting the state. We are here as a group of organizers who've been around since God was a boy, fighting the pandemic of police terror. It's not just police brutality, it's police terror. And it's also known as ICE. Right? It's also known as ICE. The border police that kill our children. So this is the story. We brought together a diverse group of organizations, longtime organizers, older folks and younger folks, to say that Latinos, the Latinx community, the African diaspora says presente. This is the thing. I teach American history and African American history, and I'm Dominican. But most people think I'm black because I call myself black because I'm black. The oppression of African Americans, lo moreno, the people that our parents called moreno, the oppression against those people forces this country to come to terms with its sins. It is the deepest contradiction in the farce that is the story of American democracy, which has never existed. If black Americans are not free, and if their lives don't matter, our lives sure as hell are not going to matter. Let me tell you something about the police in the United States. The police in the United States was organized as an institution to return escaped slaves back to the plantation. And I'm not kidding with you about this. You can go read the law books. It said that if you captured a slave, you could beat the slave 15 times in the process of returning him back to the plantation, or her, because we know about Harriet Tubman. But if the slave resists, and if the slave says, I am filled with dignity, I am a human being, the capturer, the police, was allowed to hit the slave 30 times. So what am I telling you? That white supremacy is part of the DNA of the police in America. It cannot be reformed. It has to be abolished. But let me tell you what happens after the so-called end of slavery. After the so-called end of slavery, black life wasn't worth what it was worth under slavery, because African slaves and slave Africans cost a lot of fucking money. Because they produced the wealth of this country, the cotton, the tobacco, all the cash crops. So at the end of the Civil War, you could capture a freedman, that's what they were called, a former slave, and now you could kill them. Under slavery, if you killed a slave, you could get the death penalty, because slaves were the most valued property in terms of capital before slavery. After slavery, you could kill them in the streets like a dog. And today, we see Mexicans being killed. We see Dominicans and Puerto Ricans being killed. We see all people of color being killed.
That ain't right.
And it ain't right. And it's not just Alan Félix, it's Kiko Garcia, it's Amadou Diallo, it's Anthony Baez, a generation before you. I was marching in the streets in the 1990s with hundreds of thousands Because Anthony Baez in the Bronx, his football dared to touch the car of a cop, and the cop strangled him to death. And out of his death and that of many others emerges Mothers Against Police Brutality. And we're going to hear from them at 125th Street. If we don't get it,
My name is Johanna Fernandez, and I am an associate professor of American history at Baruch College of the City University of New York. I'm also the author of a brand new book on the Young Lords, the Puerto Rican counterpart of the Black Panther Party, titled The Young Lords, A Radical History. The significance of that solidarity march of people from the African diaspora and people who call themselves Latinos, Latinas, or Latinx is the following. Of the 12 million enslaved Africans who survived the Middle Passage during the height of the slave trade, the triangular slave trade, the majority, 3/4, landed in Latin America. So we launched this march as part of the African diaspora and as Black people from Latin America, because our struggle as Black people in Latin America is that of Black people in the United States who trace their ancestry to American slavery. Our fight is the same. Now, you might argue, well, there are lots of Latinos, Latinx, who don't identify with Black Americans or even the Black diaspora. And we say absolutely, and we need to educate our community and launch a Black freedom movement in Latin America to educate our people about the institution of slavery and the ways in which it created white supremacy and slavery and racism, in Latin America. So this was also a march around solidarity around racism, but also class oppression and the horrors of living in poverty in poor neighborhoods, the horrors of being part of that class of workers who were exposed to COVID-19 in unprecedented numbers.
No peace! No justice! No peace! Hey everybody, my name's Adriana, I'm a committee member, I'm a Chicana, I'm here with my compañero Juan, a Chicano. We're gonna do a quick Know Your Rights because we're here to protect our community. All right, so the first, everybody listen up. If you're taking photos and you're posting, make sure you're blurring people's faces.
Entonces, si están tomando fotos, tienen precauciones para borrar las caras de la gente en esas fotos. Gracias.
I need everybody to disable their facial recognition on their phone right now and their GPS location, because you know what? We get surveillance and we're taking the streets. We didn't ask for permission to be here.
Entonces, si tienen la posibilidad de abrir sus teléfonos con su cara, como el de recognición, o si pueden usar sus dedos, deben desarmar ese
Ella está diciendo que en los teléfonos de ustedes vamos a ponerlo en airplane mode, en el avioncito, ustedes lo van a poner ahí, porque y también le van a quitar si tiene para reconocer la cara, que la gente ahora tiene eso, que se lo quiten, porque como nosotros no pedimos permiso para coger la calle y nosotros entendemos que el sistema siempre no está
All right, that's why we're Chicanos, right? Because we speak Spanglish. All right.
Okay. Anyway, so the next one is that so make sure to let someone know that you're here. Make sure if we got Sharpies, we're working on the security team over here. Make sure that there's someone who knows that you're here and write down their number on your arm.
All right, por favor, díganle a su familia, a un amigo que no esté aquí, por favor, llámales, avísales que ustedes están en la marcha aquí manifestando, por favor.
The other important element of this demonstration was that we wanted to proclaim that people of the African diaspora and the Latinx community are black, but we also share the same class interests with black Americans who in this city were disproportionately infected with COVID-19 and disproportionately died of COVID-19 because we are disproportionately essential workers and we disproportionately get care in the worst hospitals in the city because we are part of the working class, the super exploited working class in the city. So this was a march in solidarity because we are black. It was also a march in solidarity for justice, essentially, for racial justice and economic justice. The idea emerged in a conversation between Mickey Melendez, one of the founders of the Young Lords Party, the Puerto Rican counterpart of the Black Panther Party, and a friend of his, Gerson Borrero. They essentially said, we have to do something. We have to do something in the tradition of the common cause built by the Black Panthers and the Young Lords in the 1960s. And so Mickey Melendez called me and asked me to call a meeting with different activists and advocates in New York with a history of coming together to take a stand against injustice.
We are here today in response to a legacy of police violence that most recently took the lives of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Tony McDade, Alan Ruiz. We have a unique opportunity to cut the spending of the NYPD that consumes the largest share of the city's budget. Producing billions in savings that can be reinvested in a shared vision of community safety, infrastructure, and recovery that does not rely on the NYPD. The bloated NYPD budget funds state-sanctioned violence committed against black people. We demand that our city defunds the NYPD by at least half. At least half. And reallocate resources directly to our community that has been starved of resources for decades while being occupied and terrorized by NYPD. This is a call for us to re-envision and reimagine what public safety looks like uptown. Harlem, the Heights, Dyckman, Inwood, and Z-Bronx. Z-Bronx. We demand investments in education. We demand investments in health, housing, and employing our people. Instead of investments in criminalizing and the subjugation of our people. We demand long-term safety strategies, such as access to living wages, healthcare, quality public education, and freedom from police terror now.
So nosotros estamos aquí hoy en respuesta al legado de violencia policial que más recientemente cobró la vida de George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Tony McDade y nuestro propio Alan Feliz. Hay más nombres, ¿no? Hay más nombres. Repiten tal vez esos nombres, por favor, para nuestra comunidad en español. Anthony Vargas. Demasiado nombre hay y muchísimo que nunca lo vamos a reconocer. Entonces, por eso es que hoy salimos a las calles en defensa de las vidas negras. En este momento, las ciudades de todo el país están repensando los presupuestos municipales y reevaluando si la policía está haciendo trabajos que nunca tuvieron la intención de hacer. porque sabemos que la mamá de Mohamed va, llamó una ambulancia. ¿Y quién llegó a la puerta? La policía, que lo mataron en su propia sala, donde estaba enfermo, ¿no? Tenemos una oportunidad única de reducir el gasto de la policía de Nueva York, que consume la mayor parte del presupuesto de la ciudad, produciendo miles de millones en ahorros que pueden reinventirse en una visión compartida de seguridad, infraestructura y recuperación comunitaria que no depende de la policía de Nueva York. Y voy a decir rapidito, en estas 3 semanas de rebelión, yo he visto más máscaras, más agua, más refrescos, más helado, todo lo que tú quieras, que yo he visto el gobierno repartir en 3 meses de pandemia. Nosotros mismos hemos compartido máscaras, hemos cocido en nuestra casa, y la policía, ¿qué? El presupuesto inflado de la policía de Nueva York financia la violencia sancionada por el Estado cometida contra los negros. Exigimos que nuestra ciudad reembolse el NYPD por al menos mitad, o sea, 3.000 millones. 3.000 millones, que muchos conocemos 3 billones en este Spanglish. Y reasigne, se le podemos quitar todo, yo estoy de acuerdo. ¿Verdad? Y reasigne recursos directamente a las comunidades negras y gente no blanca. Y voy a agregar pobres, porque somos comunidades pobres, que han estado privadas de recursos durante décadas, mientras estaban ocupados y aterrorizados por el NYPD. Ese es un llamado para nosotros, para volver a imaginar y reimaginar cómo se ve la seguridad pública en nuestra comunidad de Uptown, que eso no tiene traducción. Y cuando decimos Uptown, ¿quién decimos? Harlem, Washington High, Dyckman, Inwood y el Bronx. Exigimos inversiones en educación, salud, vivienda y empleo para los miembros de nuestra comunidad, y en lugar de inversiones en criminalizar y subyugar a los miembros de nuestra comunidad. Exigimos estrategias de seguridad a largo plazo, o sea que no para el año fiscal 21. Tenemos que seguir en pie de lucha, ¿no? Como el acceso a los salarios dignos, atención médica, educación pública de calidad y libertad del terror policial. Si ustedes pueden visualizar, imaginar la misma manera que nuestros ancestros visualizaron un futuro sin colonización, un futuro donde su tierra era de ellos y la podían trabajar y son dueños de ella. Pues di que sí se puede. Sí se puede. ¿Sí se puede? Sí se puede. Amén. Así, con esa misma energía seguimos, vamos a marchar hoy en día. Y estos mismos mensajes, como dijimos en el día de ayer, tenemos que llevarlo a nuestras casas. Muchas de nuestras familias reconocemos cuando dicen desfinanciar a la policía, tienen miedo. Y estas son conversaciones muy claves que tenemos que tener y seguir empujando a nuestro pueblo de imaginar un futuro distinto.
How's everybody here? I got some data here for you to take home, analyze, and study. You know how much an NYPD officer makes? $42,000. That's not money, right? Not much. You know how much they're making overtime? Over $100,000. Over 150 is data. Look for it. Take home and study. You know what's that overtime they do with that? They book on people, arrest on people, take people to court. They go after our people. We had to fight. That's why we need to defund the police. Let's do it, people!
How important is it for the Latino community to support the movement for Black Lives The support for the movement for Black Lives is a movement in support of ourselves, because so many people from Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Mexico, all of Latin America are Black. And even among those who do not look phenotypically Black, part of what we've seen is an increase in police violence and brutality against Mexicans. Those stories are not captured in the media, but they're there. The police in the United States has targeted Black Americans and immigrants from Latin America. So we are targets, and this is a struggle essentially for ourselves, but it's also a struggle in solidarity with those in this country who historically have suffered under the thumb of white supremacy and racist state violence. It's a very human thing, and it's a very emotional thing to see something wrong and say, yes, I stand with those who are oppressed in solidarity, and I stand in their defense.
Fist up! Fight back! Fist up! Fight back! Fist up! Fight back! Fist up! Fight back! El pueblo unido! Jamás será vencido! 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 The people united will never be divided! The people united will never be divided! The people united will never be divided! I didn't come up here just to talk to y'all. I came up here to get us hype. We walking, right? We walking, right? We walking, right? We asking for us hours. I didn't come up here to give y'all a little talk. That's not what I came to do. I want to hear y'all. That's what I feel. When I'm up here, I feel the pain of the mothers. I feel the pain of the mothers that had to put their children down. Well, I didn't come here to talk to y'all. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. The people united will never be divided. The people united will never be divided. The people united will never be divided. And sure, they can never divide us. They can never divide us. Because we remember, we're not Latins for Black people. No, we are Black. Los dominicanos son negros. Los puertorriqueños son negros. Los mexicanos son negros. Black lives matter. 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 It's October 17th, 2019. Just a couple months ago, my brother had to say goodbye to his brother, and I'm here to introduce him. Justicia para Alan! 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 Justice for Alan! Justice for Alan! Justice for Alan! Justice for Alan!
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out today. Thank you, truly. I feel like every time I'm at a rally or a march, it just dignifies the beauty that when people come together in a community, the strength and power that we have when we're together. So thank you for symbolizing that strength with us here once again today. This country was created by us, is being ran by us, and will be continued to be owned and ran by us. We can no longer let the people sitting on the top of the hills dictate what we do and how we speak and how we feel. Our hurt is real. The people that we're losing are real. And this hurts that we have to come together to fight for human life. It makes no sense that we have to gather 1,000 people to symbolize how important our loved ones are to us. If you lose someone, you hurt. They hurt just like us. So how can they not understand the pain that we're currently going through? On October 17th of 2019, my brother was murdered by the NYPD. He was stopped on a traffic stop for an alleged seatbelt violation. He had his seatbelt on the whole time. The officer, instead of letting that just go by, hey, my bad, because if you make a mistake, you'll say my bad and let the person keep going. No. My brother was of color, he was in a nicer car. Let me dig a little deeper. For no reason whatsoever. Okay, a warrant popped up and he had to detain him. He didn't detain him. He decided to talk around the situation. After an altercation in the vehicle, an officer let one fatal shot off in my brother's chest. This happened less than 2,000 feet from a hospital. So as you can see this hospital from here where we stand, so can my brother as he took his last gasp of air when this officer had the shoot to kill mentality instead of shoot to maim. It ain't right. Say it louder. It ain't right. It ain't right. And it will never be right. So we gotta take away the shoot to kill mentality from the NYPD. In order for us to do this, we have to hit them where it hurts. We have to hit them where it hurts, ladies and gentlemen. We have to hit them in their pockets. We have to defund the NYPD by $1 billion, by $2 billion, by $3 billion, all of it. They don't need it. They don't use it right. They're not protecting the people. They're killing the people. If we give the fire department $6 billion, I bet you there'll never be a burnt building in this hood ever again. They do their job. We don't want to give them $6 billion because they do just fine with what they're doing. But damn, why give somebody this amount of power that can't do right or their job correctly? The NYPD has been taking, not only the NYPD, but all officers in this nation have been taking countless lives for years. This isn't just 2019, 2020 thing. This isn't just this week or last week. This has been for years, 40, 50, 60 years of police injustice and police brutality. As this happened to my brother, I had no choice but to do more investigation on other countless lives that had been taken. Ahmaud Arbery's, Breonna Taylor's, George Floyd's. And I ran into a young man that was named Keyston Charles. And I apologize to the family because I wasn't able to get your permission to speak about your son, and I know it hurts because it's been over 8 years. Keyston Charles was a young man, a teenager in Brooklyn, who was shot to death by the same officer who killed my brother. By the same officer who killed my brother. That ain't right. That ain't right. That ain't right. That ain't right. He shot this kid 16 times as he had his hands in the air. And as you can tell, this family had no justice. We ain't gonna let it happen again, ladies and gentlemen. This officer will not walk again. And I don't say his name because it would only further empower him, and he is not important. His name isn't gonna ring bells for something good or anything. I don't want him to gain popularity about this. I just want him to go to jail. I want justice. Monetary values will not silence us. Paying us off, we don't want that. That ain't gonna bring my brother back. Ever. He left a 1-year-old boy who will never get to play ball with his son. Ever. A 1-year-old. This kid hadn't even been able to clearly say the word Dada before his father was taken. How fair is that? That ain't fair. That ain't right and that ain't fair. As I stand here with my families and you guys now, my brothers and sisters, I want us to not be silenced. This is not a trend. This will not go away. This will not fade away. My hurt is forever, and I will not be silenced. Thank you for your time.
Policía mata a un negro, más colonia. Policía mata a un negro, más colonia. Policía asesina, libre a más colonia. Policía asesina, libre a más colonia. Police shoot and murder one, and another day by day. Police shoot and murder one, and another day by day. After all the murder, still free, they remain. And after all the murder, still free, they remain. Cause they dress in blue and they're born white. Cause they dress in blue and they're born white. Assassins in the night. Criminales corren libre por la calle. Criminales corren libre. Criminales corren libre por la calle. Porque visten de azul. Porque visten de azul. Porque y blanco nació. Porque visten de azul y blanco nació y asesinos son. Criminals running loose through these streets. Criminals hanging loose on a tree. Criminals, but them always see free. Cause they dress in blue. Cause they dress in blue. And they're born white. Cause they dress in blue and they're born white. Assassins in the night. Not in our fucking name. The time is now. That's it. Our ancestors are with us and we are good. That's it.
So over 100 groups were integrated in the march and signed the statement. And it was essentially word of mouth. We built the demonstration in a little over a week. We started having Zoom meetings y la palabra rodó. And it came at such an important moment that it just picked up steam, and people heard about it and they joined the Zoom calls and they called us to sign their organizations onto the call.
I believe the first call was June 7 or June 6th. I remember because the Reverend Dorlimar Lebron called me and asked me to be on the call. And I said, what on the call? And she said, no, you need to be on the call and the Zoom. And it was fantastic. It was like, wow, this is historic. And then when, it was José, Mickey Menendez, Stella Vasquez, every time they mentioned a name that I knew is somebody's significance in the movement. Yomar Torres, then you have the young people, Domingo Esteve, and that group of young people, I was like, wow, they are doing incredible work in the neighborhood. They have already organized several marches up in the Heights. So I made the connection, you made the connection, whoever invited them made the connection. So that was, for the press, I think that was the key with the press. The people who were involved, the different groups, and the key is the phone call. Dorlimar Lebron, we already been speaking about the church and how we can be helpful. Our studio is up in 104th Street between Lexington and 3rd, the Manhattan Neighborhood Network, El Barrio Firehouse Community Media Center. We are a community media center. Están llegando al barrio. Y estamos en la 112 con Lexington. So she already knows what we had done with Union Settlement, what we had done with the elected official. We've done several town hall meetings in the community with different groups, different organizations, with whole community, with the youth in El Barrio. So she knew, that's how I found out. She called me. I was in the very first Zoom call, which I feel privileged.
Part of what we saw happening in the last 2 or 3 months was that people of all ethnicities were outraged by the killing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Jacob Blake. So part of what we saw happening in the aftermath of the police killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor was that there was an uprising that was profoundly multi-ethnic and multiracial. Why? Because the entire nation had seen the horror of a failed state during the pandemic. We were all in our homes watching this country stand by while our people were killed. And so because these killings were so horrible, they tapped into the horror that we had lived months, weeks earlier in this very city. And so when we called an explicitly multiracial demonstration in solidarity with Black Americans, it tapped into the sentiment of the period. This is what people wanted to say explicitly. Yes, it doesn't matter that we are not Black Americans. For Latinos, it does matter because we too are Black and we too are targeted by the police. But this is a struggle for our very humanity. And in this country, African Americans have historically forced the nation to come to terms with the discrepancy between its high ideals and the horror of its reality. So it came at the perfect moment, and it answered the question and the feeling that everyone had in their minds and in their hearts.
To El Hajj Malik El Shabazz and all of our ancestors, when it comes down, don't you be afraid. When it comes down, no matter what name you call, just be ready for it all. I am ready for it all. Abolish pigs all across the nation. Take away prison and militarization. Abolish pigs across the nation. Take away pigs and militarization. When it comes down, don't you be afraid. When it comes down, no matter what name you call, I'm old school like the beginning of rap. Extant, more like the beginning of boom bap. From back, Africa Black. For the people, never tired, forever live until I die. Get them high, everybody come on. Say freedom! Freedom! Say freedom! Freedom! Say revolution! Revolution! I am an Afro-Indina Maroon. I am Puerto Rican and Jamaican. We are here in the struggle. We are here with you. We have always been together. Don't let anybody tell you different. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Señores y señoras, esta es la revolución. This is what revolution looks like. And next up, to talk to us about the long struggle to free the island of Puerto Rico, we've got Norma Perez.
We planned the demonstration over the course of a little over a week, but we wanted to march the route of previous historically important freedom movements and people in this city.
Well, we did the route. Mark and I, we had the course Saturday and Sunday. I said we had the next course at 11 a.m. By 9 o'clock, I was in Washington Heights, trying to figure out the routes. So I sent everything to Mark and to Estela, and Estela was guiding me in the phone. Oh, go this way, go that way. Let's do it to San Nicolas. Let's do it through Amsterdam Avenue, because it was in the middle of the pandemic. So I was driving, and I was taking a little video, photograph and video. I had them on the speakerphone, and that's how I did the first route. And then we were modifying a little bit, because the key was that we were going to go through Amsterdam or to San Nicolas in order to be able to merge to West Harlem and 125th Street.
We started up in Washington Heights, now a predominantly Dominican neighborhood, but that was also the place where Malcolm X, the iconic freedom fighter in the United States, was killed by the state in 1964-65. And Malcolm X was an idol and a freedom fighter who stood for the rights in that period of Black Americans and Puerto Ricans in this city, who had migrated in large numbers from Puerto Rico after World War II. And in many ways, the Young Lords, the Puerto Rican counterpart to the Black Panther Party, which was also a profoundly multi-ethnic organization that had Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, African Americans, Colombians, Panamanians, that organization called itself the Young Lords, heir to the legacy of Malcolm X and his uncompromising struggle against racism, white supremacy, but also his fight for pride among oppressed people and Black people in particular. So the Malcolm X ballroom, or the Audubon ballroom where Malcolm X was killed, was one of the stops.
Independencia para Puerto Rico. Independencia para Puerto Rico. ¿Cuándo es? ¿Y cuándo es? ¿Cuándo es? Thank you so much for inviting me. Es un honor estar aquí al frente de todos ustedes y hablando de Pedro Albizu Campos. Albizu vive, la lucha sigue. Albizu vive. La lucha sigue. Albizu vive. La lucha sigue. Albizu vive. La lucha sigue. Albizu, nuestro afroboricua Albizu, discriminado por su color de piel, eliminado de la universidad, quisieron eliminarlo de la universidad, se graduó siendo el mejor estudiante y no lo dejaron dar su speech de graduación. ¿Por qué? Por discrimen, por racismo. Albizu, el abogado de los trabajadores y las trabajadoras. Albizu, el abogado de los pobres en Puerto Rico y en el mundo. Albizu, que buscó la unidad del Caribe, de Sudamérica, de todas las comunidades. Albizu, el que siempre estuvo hombro con las mujeres luchadoras de mi país. Ese es el Albizu que nos representa. Ese es el Albizu que está aquí presente. Y es un honor que yo esté invocando su espíritu en este momento, junto al espíritu del gran Malcolm X. ¡Malcolm X vive! ¡La lucha sigue! ¡Malcolm X vive! ¡La lucha sigue! ¡Malcolm X vive! ¡La lucha sigue! Nuestro deber revolucionario es pedir que la policía se largue, que le quiten todos los recursos, que los recursos económicos se les den a las comunidades y a las escuelas donde están nuestras comunidades, que le den todos esos recursos a las comunidades que tienen necesidad. Ese es nuestro deber. No permitamos ni una vida más que caiga entre las manos de estos asesinos. Nos asesinaron a Malcolm, nos asesinaron a Albizu, le dieron radiación, lo metieron en cárcel simplemente por sus creencias. Así que muchas gracias por estar aquí. No olvidemos que es el imperio el que tenemos que eliminar. Tenemos que eliminar la política imperialista que tiene este sistema racista. Eliminar el racismo del todo. Defund the police is not the only one. We have to start doing that. Not only defund the police, we have to defund the system. The funds goes to the communities. The funds goes to our community, black and brown communities. This is what we want. The funds goes to the school, the public system. The funds has to go to the health system. That's what we are looking for. That's what we have to fight about. Y como dijera Albizu en su discurso del 1950, el asesino es el poder. Tenemos que eliminar al asesino. We have to eliminate the power. They have the power, we have to eliminate them. Black Lives Matter. Albizu vive, la lucha sigue. Malcolm vive. La lucha sigue. Señores, quédense ahí, por favor. Aquí estamos en Washington Heights y nosotros sabemos que hay un lío entre los puertorriqueños y los dominicanos. Pero vengo para decirle a ustedes que la bandera nacionalista puertorriqueña fue otorgada a Puerto Rico por la República Dominicana. Ya ustedes saben, there's a rift between Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, but we're here to tell you that the Puerto Rican nationalist flag was given to Puerto Rico by the Dominican Republic.
We also stopped on the block that Kiko Garcia was killed by New York City police. Kiko Garcia was a Dominican youth who was killed in 1992, and guess what? There were riots in Washington Heights. The Washington Heights riots in 1992 in response and in reaction to that brutal killing.
Policía, asesino, policía, asesino.
Angry Washington Heights residents called the police assassins, meanwhile keeping a watchful vigil over a makeshift memorial to Jose Garcia, who would have turned 24 today. The part-time bodega clerk was killed Friday night by 34th Precinct plainclothes police officer Michael O'Keefe, a death that sparked violent community protest. Community leaders like City Councilman Guillermo Linares scrambled to calm the growing outrage in the community. In the afternoon, Mayor Dinkins paid a visit to the grieving family of the victim.
I came to pay my respects and offer my condolences to the family and to assure them that everything that can be done will be done to thoroughly investigate the circumstances of this death.
Witnesses insist the unarmed man pleaded for his life as Officer O'Keefe beat him repeatedly with his police radio, then shot him in cold blood in the lobby of this apartment building. But the police account is that Officer O'Keefe found a fully loaded .38 caliber revolver on Garcia. Residents accuse O'Keefe of being a crooked cop who allegedly ripped off drug dealers. Investigators have yet to question O'Keefe, who's called in sick every day since the shooting. The incident comes at a time when the 34th Precinct, along with several others, is under investigation for corruption.
Do you feel that this incident is going to accelerate the investigation of police corruption in the city, especially regarding the 34th?
I think it ought to be understood that an allegation of police brutality, which is what exists here, is not the same as an allegation of corruption.
An autopsy by the medical examiner ruled the death a homicide, but revealed no evidence Garcia was beaten, disputing witness accounts.
We also stopped at City College, another site of black and brown struggle in the city. And we also stopped at the residence of Yuri Kochiyama, a Japanese American who had been interned during World War II, during the Japanese internment, who happened to be the woman who held Malcolm X's head when he was shot dead at the Audubon Ballroom. So we chose stops and moments that are significant and symbolic for the struggle for human liberation in the United States, which has historically been led by racially oppressed people in this country, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Black Americans, but also Native Americans.
Hey, can everybody hear me? All the way in the back, we need quiet, please. Mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Mic check.
Señores y señores, vecinos, vecinas que están viéndolo por la ventana, queremos rescatar la historia. La última rebelión que se dio en Nueva York por la violencia policíaca fue aquí en Washington Heights, por el asesinato de Kiko García. ¡Justicia para Kiko! ¡Justicia para Kiko!
The most challenging situation was working so quickly. Most of us had to work around the clock. From 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. in the evening, we were on it, collecting names, getting together, figuring out what the route was going to be. We were trying to get others to join on. We had to produce a flyer. We had to figure out who we are and what we stand for. I remember that one of the first discussions was around the issue of who we are and what do we call ourselves. And there was a big fight. Who are we? Are we Latinos? Are we Latinas? Are we Latinx? Are we part of the African diaspora? And that was a battle that took at least a day or two. And there were hurt feelings, but it was an important conversation about who we are in this moment and what we bring to this fight for human liberation in the age of Black Lives Matter. We also stopped at the state office building on 125th Street, right? Because in many ways, that's the mecca of Black political life in Harlem.
Taken away from them. And to introduce to you, to those families, I bring up David Galarza. David Galarza of Justice Committee, the Young Lords, the Black Panthers, and Richard Morales.
Thank you, Joanna. ¿Qué queremos? Justicia. ¿Cuándo? ¿Qué queremos? Justicia. ¿Y cuándo? Ahora. ¿Qué queremos? Justicia. ¿Y cuándo? Ahora. Give yourselves a hand for marching down to 125th Street. We turned the Puerto Rican Day Parade into something meaningful this year. We turned it into a march for racial, social, and economic justice. Because Black Lives Matter. 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 We're here today with several of the family members of people that have had family members murdered by the NYPD. So without much further ado, I introduce you to Constance Malcolm, and then she'll introduce the rest of the families.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Constance Malcolm. I'm the mother of Romali Ryan. Romali was murdered February 2nd, 2012. So that's 8 years I've been fighting for justice for my son that I never got. But today, we are in the street. The people are being, we're in the street. And we show that we are powerful. We are here to say to the lawmakers, the governors, that we want change. And change must start now. It must start now. No more killing of our black and brown people. As mothers are trying to cry for our kids, we should not be burying our kids. Our kids should be burying us. We are tired. We're sick and tired. I'm here today because I'm fighting for my son. The one was killed in my house where he should be safe. He should have been safe in his own home. I got my son that stood there at 6 years old and watched his brother gun down in front of him. He's 14 now, and this is why I fight so hard every day out here in the street to make sure this doesn't happen to him. I ask you again, please, don't stop now. This is what they want. Cuomo said it himself that the protesters should go home. We are not going home. We are not going home. We want accountability. We want justice. Defund the police. Defund the police by $1 billion. We want teachers. We want social workers. We want to help them. De Blasio, you taking the homeless people off the street in the subway. What are your long-term goals? Where are you going to put them? Let's start there. There should be no police in school. We send our school teachers and we send our kids to school to learn. We need guidance counselor. When our kids don't want to talk to us, at least they have somewhere to go. My time is up, but I want to say, people, please stay in the street. Don't give up. We will never give up the fight.
Two more families that are here with us today. One is the family of Jason Tirado. The other one is the family of Antonio Williams. And they both also wanted to say some brief remarks about what happened to their loved ones. And I was reminded by the great musician Bobby Sanabria that look around you, man. This is Fred Hampton's dream. Black and brown, run this town. This is the railroad coalition. It's full of blood. Alright? So give yourselves a hand for being here. For fighting.
Hello, my name is Gladys Williams, mother of Antonio Williams. Antonio Williams was pretty much murdered 2019, September 29th, by the NYPD. Mo Keen and 5 other officers came out of an unmarked car and they chased him down. They shot him multiple times. And this is a great, all the unity from you guys and all the support, and you know, Black Lives Matters at all times, all the time. We need justice for all these families, justice for us. It's time that we have a voice, and let's do what we gotta do. Justice, no peace.
He was in his car, he was shot in the back, he died in his car, the officer left, he didn't report it, he didn't even call 911, he left him there to die, and 19 hours later, he went and he told his boss, I think I killed someone. He was they didn't file any charges against him, not even leaving the scene of an accident or anything like that. He got to stay on the force and he retired a couple of years later. His name is Sean Sawyer. Sean Sawyer! Sean Sawyer!
Fuck Sean Sawyer!
Thank you.
Yes, I'm the father of Antonio Williams. Just like my wife said, he was shot down. And then after that, the police decided to go out and try to dehumanize him by bringing up one thing like a mark in his past that I guess, according to life, when you go to jail, when you do something and you pay for it, it's a clean slate now. But then they want to go out and pull it out the hat, pull everything out, saying, okay, this is that, just to justify what they did, just to cover up what they did. So, yes, we're here to say, defund the police, shut it down if they don't listen, hold police accountable for their actions. The police is no bigger than you and I. They're human. So when you make a mistake, you pay just like we do. They're not above the law. It's time we start letting these cops know that they are never above the law. You pay just like everybody else. Power to the people! Power to the people! Power to the people!
I think it's important to recognize someone very important. The only TV program, the only network that covered us was BronxNet. BronxNet, give it up for BronxNet. And the queen of BronxNet is Rina Valentin. The queen of the barrio, la reina del barrio. La reina del barrio. She stands up for the people at the bottom, the small businesses, the artists, and she amplifies their message on the internet. So give it up. She's the only person, the only reporter who covered us before the march. Thank you, Rina Valentin. But now you're going to hear from my friend and comrade, the people's hip-hop artist. Give it up for Immortal Technique.
How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! My name is Immortal Technique. I was born in Hospital Militar de Lima in Peru, and we represent a faction, a gigantic faction of Latino people, so-called Latino people, who refuse to accept the racism that was ingrained into our society. We refuse to accept that that's the way it is. But I will tell you why Latino people were ingrained with such racism when we were young. You see, here in this country, I look Latino, but when I go home to South America, I'm not considered an Indio, I'm not considered indigenous, I'm considered a mestizo. Latin America is the birthplace of the racial tier system. So when people came here from Cuba that I know and they moved to Miami in the 70s and 80s, they said, I'm here in America, free. No, you N-word, you can't come in this store. We don't want people like you. See, the racial tier system was not honored here in America. That's why someone who's light-skinned thinks they're caramel. You think you're something else because you want to be anything but what the fuck you are. That was over something completely different, create a wedge between us. We know who we are, ladies and gentlemen. You know who you are. Can I get one of those from me? We know who we are. 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 Viva la revolución. Viva la revolución. I love you. Remember, some of us, we are the same people. We just speak a Latin-based language. That's it. Te quiero con todo mi corazón. Que viva la revolución. Que viva mi gente afroamericana. Te quiero mucho. Harlem in the building. We love you. test. Mic check. This is a test. This is a test. The state of disunion is homeless and has no address. Wrapped in a tattered, blood-splattered banner. Fat Sam sleeps on park bench. Bag spare change from the Japanese embassy. Payback for Hiroshima. The Wall Street yo-yo defies balance. Budget won't budge. Eviction papers served. Angry landlords demand cash deposits before postponement, but no postponement of poverty is granted. Only in God we trust. Stamped on a gold bullion or maybe a Krugerrand might do. The plastic melts down and jams up the ATM machines, and the ashes at the token booth is only a token of the sickness. It's 12:46 a.m. and this poem interrupts the night, demanding to be written. Because bosses like bowling balls throw strikes against unions, and 30 pieces of silver won't save your soul. Willie lynched us so bad that violence doesn't shock us anymore. Not even death lasts forever, as a daily diet is elusive to the many. All the factories are closed. Nothing's made here anymore. No one works. All the unions busted. Everyone's gone fishing. All the fish are dead. Even nuns have dildos, and confessional chambers are not safe for your young sons. The cross is a sword used by conquerors, stuck in the heart of the earth. The richest country in the world is morally bankrupt. The president's a joke. Sound like an emergency to me. Some take it as a joke or hoax to keep the peace at least, or at least to keep the peace. But I really need to know, are you listening? And can we all get to the same page in this book of life? Mic check, this is a test. The state of disunion is homeless and has no address. Is this thing on? The real Black Panthers ain't in Wakanda. Real Black Panthers ain't in Wakanda. Never had vibranium. Ain't Afrofuturistic. In fact, their future is in peril. An endangered species, living heroes and sheroes, not Marvel characters imagined by Disney. No blockbuster movie by Hollywood. America says they don't exist, but JAG or whoever declared them dangerous. Counterintelligence programmed them, disappeared them behind prison walls. Warriors in the struggle for liberation never asked to be citizens. Righteous soldiers, they did not wear uniforms. Guilty only of taking a stand to free the land. Framed by a system that refuses to acknowledge their sovereignty. Go and tell the children, tell them we had real heroes that lived and died for freedom. Call them by their name, Fred Hampton, Little Bobby Hutton, Safia Bukhari, Herman Ferguson, Bashir Hamid, Zaid Malik Shakur, Geronimo, as in Jijaga Pret. Just to name a few who died too soon, like Kouassi Balagoon. There's no need to make shit up. Many still languish behind the walls. Heroes and sheroes standing tall. Mumia Abu Jabal, Russell Maroon Schultz, Herman Wallace, Matulu Shakur, Jalil Mutakim, Robert Seth Hayes, Imam Jamil Al-Amin, Rochelle Sinkay McGee. Some locked down almost half a century. Yes, my friend, they are real Black Panthers. This is only a few that need to be free, and they damn sure ain't in Wakanda. Yes.
I'm an activist, and because of the years that I have been doing this kind of work, I know how it works, which is, once you did your statement, from there we took and made a press release, made a request, and then follow up with phone call. The key to get people to cover is the phone call. I also find out that there were only 2 demonstrations on that day. The one in Brooklyn and ours here, the June 14th. So that also was an advantage. So when I made a phone call to make sure that we had the coverage, I also emphasized the importance of the march, starting from Washington Heights all the way to East Harlem, and the groups, it was just so much that the press could not miss. It could not miss because it was historic. It was an historic march. I don't think we have had this kind of collaboration in the last 20, 30 years because it's been like that. The other thing is there were so many groups that people in the press do not know that they are still active. It was so many, we have so many groups that really people don't understand. Our community is more organized than we think because to bring all the number of people that came to the march in such a short period of time.
I'm 16 years old. I was raised here in Harlem, and I'm glad to be here today. I came here to speak on injustice in our community, which is facing, and how together as a unified front we can make a change. After I say, okay, hold on. So my piece is called I Can't Breathe. Asked to step out, taken out of his car, questioning if it's based on his skin. Thrown to the ground, pinned to the floor, held by a knee to his neck. Treated like a rag doll, treated like trash, treated like nothing. Treated like the life given wasn't important, treated not as an equal. He cried, yet they wouldn't listen. He pleaded, yet they ignored. I can't breathe. The pressure tightens. I can't breathe. The weight becomes heavy. I can't breathe. The light fades. I can't breathe. Blood spills from his nose. I can't breathe. No air is taken in. I can't breathe. With a final blink, his body is laid to rest. And now we're forced to protest because his words were oppressed and his rights weren't met. Please get your knee off my neck. I can't breathe. George Floyd.
This movement is never going to stop until we see justice. Am I right? We are not stopping. We are continuing, and we will not stop. As nurses, we know that racism is a public health crisis. We see it every day, everywhere we work. And we saw it clearly during the corona pandemic that hit New York so hard in the past few months. But who suffered the most? Our black and brown communities had the highest rates of infection, of serious illness, and of death. I don't have to repeat the statistics because we live and breathe them every day. Before corona, during corona, and right now as it continues. Hospitals in black and brown neighborhoods were drowning in COVID patients with severity of illness so bad, so overwhelming, that our caregivers literally fainted from exhaustion. Thousands of us were infected as well. Hundreds of frontline caregivers and frontline so-called essential workers succumbed to the virus, and no surprise, the vast majority were people of color. The only business that saw customers in our communities during the pandemic were funeral parlors, and that is wrong. And what about those who couldn't afford funerals? They were buried in Potter's Fields in graves dug by Rikers Island inmates, almost all of whom come from our communities. Our prison population and those in immigrant detention suffer the highest rates of infection. It's a population our government wants us to ignore, where the luxury of social distancing is impossible, and where they lack soap, hand gel, and masks. Racism is a public health crisis. It haunts us from womb to tomb. Black and brown women in the U.S. die from complications of childbirth. Infant mortality among people of color occur in rates that rival the poorest communities in the planet. And this in the wealthiest nation the world has ever seen. Wealth procured on the backs of the working class, built on the blood, sweat, tears, and lives of black and brown people for centuries. Both the police and private security forces are used to terrorize workers fighting for better life, especially targeting black and brown people and immigrants. And that same terror exists in our communities today, where the legalized murder of black men and women by the police historically occurred with impunity, but not anymore, no more. And in Puerto Rico, the additional burden of colonization has harmed people even further in disaster care and the lack of health care in that community as well. Nurses stand for racial and economic justice. We stand for life. We stand for the dignity, health, and well-being of every single human being. And we recognize very clearly that only when Black lives matter will all lives matter. Black 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 lives matter. All right. We want all of you to stay put because we are on our way to the People's Church, the church that was occupied by the Young Lords, the Puerto Rican counterpart to the Black Panther Party. And you're going to hear from Black Panthers and Young Lords there. But before you do, I want to introduce you to Romeo Beato, an Afro-Dominican.
Peace, everyone, peace. As a young person, I want to address all the young people in the crowd. And to clarify, everyone under 100, you with that. So first, to the young people, we need you here today. We need you here tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now. The struggle is long, and you have the time, the energy, the creativity, the fire that we need to make this dream of a new world come true for justice. And we all know white supremacy is a hell of a drug. It makes good into evil, evil into good, it erases history, it degrades people. But we know, and I know, as an Afro-Latino, when black people get free, we all get free. So we're here for George, we're here for Brianna, we're here for Ahmad, we're here for all the victims of police violence. We're here to free you, we're here to free me, we're coming for everybody. We're coming for this city, we're coming for this country, and we're coming for the world. Young people, rise up!
That was the shortest speech. Give it up for the youngest person around. Okay, we've got Ralph Pointer. Ralph Pointer, long distance revolutionary Ralph Pointer. He's going to talk to us about political prisoners.
My brothers and sisters, it is great to see you out here today, but we must remember, the road to justice is long. But one of the things we forgot on our way to justice on that long road is who we are. Now, I want you to repeat after me. We are an African people.
An African people.
We are
An African people.
An African people.
We are
An African people.
An African people.
And we must remember those brothers and sisters who march with us on a unity of purpose are also our brothers and sisters. And when we understand that, we will have the means of justice. And one of the means of justice is to end unemployment. We can do that if we control our education budget. It's $30 billion in New York City. We will remember our heroes when we control our education. Our brothers and sisters in the death camps who fought for us to make it possible for us to have this space to continue the struggle for liberation, for freedom, for jobs, for justice. So we must remember those political prisoners. We know them by name, but we don't know them nearly well enough. So they must be in our school curriculum. Those who were there, who fought to free us all and to keep us safe. The list is too long to repeat here. We know many have been in the death camps for over 50 years, beginning with our brother, Leonard Peltier, who was an indigenous people when they brought the slaves. He represented them. We all know the name of Mumia, but there are many others, and demand from your history teachers, demand that you know and learn the names of our political prisoners who made it possible for us to be here. What's the call? Free them all! What's the call? Free them all! What's the call? Free them all! Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph Pointer. And now hear from the mother of Mohammed Ba, another victim of police terror.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so proud all you people come outside today in Harlem. First of all, I want to tell you, I was an immigrant from West Africa, Conakry, Guinea. I'm the mother of Mohammed Ba. My son Mohammed Ba, the mother in 125th Street and Monisa Avenue, right here. Mohammed Ba was an honor student. Mohammed Ba was a taxi driver. Mohammed Ba never committed a crime. They discriminate Mohammed as the hear his name Mohammed. They discriminate Mohammed as the color of his skin. They disrespect me because they ask me who I know. I say, I don't understand what you mean. I'm the mother of Mohammed Ba. He's sick. I want to take him to the best hospital. I will pay. They say, oh, mom, don't worry, we'll take care. They take care because they kill him. When I called for the ambulance, before ambulance people come, NYPD show up. I say, I don't call you, I'm looking for ambulance. To summarize the two, I begged them, the family begged them, the neighbors begged them and said, this boy, he's a good boy. He's good for everyone here. If you say he don't want to open the door, he have emotional distress, let him, mom and the family talk to him, he will open the door. They refuse. If I tell you, I feel when I see George. I remember myself in September 2012. In from my son building, when we talked to them, everybody talked, they refused and killed Mohammed. Since 2012, I fight, I build it. The Puerto Rico people support me. Everybody support me. Black mothers support me. Black people support me. They saved my life. When I expressed the idiots in from the jury, they wait for me to
for the subway because they know all the time when people behind me, I don't want to take a car and leave them alone. But that day I can say Black Panther refused, put me in the car and meet them, they're waiting for me. We need freedom. Black life is matter. Judge life is matter. We want, you should join for us since that time, who say no more other Muhammad but in the black community to be murdered and the parent that to suffer 6 years before expose the truth out. We work for the special prosecutor. We work for the appeal the 58 why they used to shield all the people, and that work will never happen again. Thank you so much. This is just starting. We will be fighting until we got free. We will be until we not be free. No parent can be suffered, the mother, the child, and the neighbor suffered upon the truth. Now the truth is out. Thank you.
We're here because there is something in the soul that cries for freedom. We are here because we want to fight to avenge the deaths of all those black and brown and poor white people who've been killed by the cops. We're here because we want to build a new world, a world organized around human need and not profit, a world where we will need no cops. We want a world that protects, that honors our environment. We want a world that honors life. We want a world where dignity doesn't have to be fought for. Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! We're going to move into the People's Church. If we don't get it, if we don't get it, if we don't get it, shut it down. If we don't get it, if we don't get it.
Special training in the dark of night or broad daylight. They interrupt community with terror and fight. The law is on their side as they maim and kill. To them it's just a game we know it gives them a thrill. Somebody's mother will, somebody's child. Bump up your green pillar, kill a couple miles. Oh, when you heard the news, tell me what you gonna do. Heard the news, tell me what you gonna do. Heard the news, tell me what you gonna do. Tell me what you gonna do. You heard the news, tell me what you gonna do. Heard the news, tell me what you gonna do. Heard the news, tell me what you gonna do. Tell me what you gonna do. You know they came wearing gas masks with bars for restraining. Came carrying shotguns. Came with special training, yeah. Well, killer cops dressed in blue. Told out of the bumper, so rent was overdue. Say your time is up, your sentence is set. This kind of thing we should never forget. Somebody's mother was somebody's child. Bumper lived in Greenville, kill a couple miles. And then you heard the news, tell me what you gonna do. Heard the news, tell me what you gonna do. Heard the news, tell me what you gonna do. Tell me what you gonna do, yeah. Tell me what you gonna do, hell yeah. Tell me what you gonna do.
Celebrating the all black
Stop, killer cop!
We also stopped at 111th Street and Lexington Avenue, where we are standing now, which is the site of the First Spanish United Methodist Church. It is the church that the Young Lords occupied in 1969 to protest poverty and racism in the city and to force its institutions to address the conditions of oppression, political and economic, under which we live.
El hombre tiene derecho de dejarlo parar.
somos igual.
Lo de Venezuela, déjalo parar.
Déjalo parar, déjalo parar.
Lo de Venezuela, déjalo parar.
Ay, repícame la bomba, repícame los cuadros.
Our shared history. My family's from Haiti on one side, Barbados on the other side. But guess what? I love all black people all over the world. I don't care if you're from Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, from Venezuela, from Mexico. I love all my black people all over the world. And I think it's pretty clear. We all know, fuck the police. I love y'all. I love y'all. Thank you.
Oye mi gente, oye mi gente, traemos la fuerza, oye mi gente, traemos la fuerza, la libertad es mi única bandera, rise on my people, my condors, my eagles. No human being ever be illegal. No human being ever be illegal. Woo! Greetings from the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for a moral revival. And the Poor People Campaign put together a demand that we want you to go, when you go home, go to our website and sign this demand. This morning when I checked, we have already almost 15,125. And I just mention three. We demand, protect and expand the right to vote. Protect and expand the right to vote. We demand that there must be consequences for abuses of police power and justice for families and communities who have been harmed and terrorized by police violence. Must be a matter of law. We demand demilitarize the police. Demilitarize the police. End mass incarceration. End mass incarceration. Stop criminalizing the poor. Stop criminalizing the poor. Fight poverty. Fight poverty. Fight poverty. Fight poverty.
and addressing poverty and disadvantage in our community that brought us to this point. Please go home and sign this demand. Fight poverty! Fight poverty! Fight poverty! Thank you!
I love you. My name is Immortal Technique, and it goes like this. They got a new housing plan for the ghetto eventually. Projects for a new American century. False flag terrorism controlling you mentally. The gospel in the hands of people with no empathy. A mixture of dangerous social chemistry. A mix of law enforcement and a military entity. Cameras on the corner of every corner you facing. Testing out a future Gestapo on immigration. Power, consolidation, information restricted. Just like the iron law of oligarchy predicted. Incarcerating the poor among the drug addicted. But not the families of the ruling class that's afflicted. Cause it's a fucking caste system. Like corrupted Hinduism. I think you should listen. I've been through the system in prison. I've been through religion. I carried the cross as a Christian. Like it was anti-disestablishmentarianism. Until the seeds of despotism arrested my vision. Lyricism with cynicism and syllogisms. Until they Pedro Aldi Campos and kill me in prison. Chemtrail conditions. Stem cells of Leo Strauss's philosophy. The birth of neocon policy. But we laugh at America's fear of a new world order controlling the hemisphere. Cause our people have been living that shit for the past 500 years. I love y'all. Harlem. Thanks to
nosotros. The whole world is with us. Que nos jodan con la gente. Y tengo Puerto Rico en mi corazón, como todos ustedes. Las calles, la gente. That was what the young lords were about. We served the people, and we cared for the people, just like you all do now. Because Black Lives Matter. Place and the church where about 105 young lords here got beat up, Felipe Luciano, brutally beat up by the police, right? And 105 young lords and community were dragged out of this church, blood going into the streets, into the paddy wagon. And we said, hell no, we're coming back here. Then we came back stronger, con más gente, con la comunidad, and we took over the fucking church for the people, for the gente, for the food holdings, for our people, and that's what you all are doing. But I do have a message, and this is from the Los Angeles Black Panthers, that they wanted me to connect to tell you que ellos están en Los Angeles, en donde quiera que nosotros estamos, aquí en Nueva York, en Puerto Rico, allá y aquí, en Los Ángeles, en Minneapolis, en todos los diferentes pueblos que estamos aquí en Estados Unidos. Ellos querían que yo diga esto. Hey, you all, we want to thank everyone that has been on the ground confronting the law enforcement violence and calling for important reforms. We should all be aware there are social justice activists, political prisoners que todavía están en la cárcel because of the same thing that we're doing here for Black Lives Matter. They are our political prisoners and they fought and they've been in prison for, they're still in prison, 40, 50 años, 40 to 50 years. because they were standing against racism and police violence. How do you spell racist? How do you spell racist? Because they were standing up against racism and police violence like you all are doing today, and like you are gonna do tomorrow, and like you all are gonna do next week, and next year, until you get justice, justicia para la gente. Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
Guys, I gotta let you know that I was a little emotional. Hearing the drums, seeing all these beautiful people, and I just could not help but think, what a time to be alive. I don't know if you went to church today, but this is what church looks like for me. And every time, one of the things that's happened during COVID is that people are no longer allowed to meet in churches, right? And they're like stressed out, because man, church is closed. But friends, church is happening every day when we are out in these streets, every day when we are fighting for justice, every day when we are lifting up the voices of the least of these, and I feel the spirit with us today. I feel a revolutionary spirit with us today. And I wanted to share that I believe in two things. I believe in the spirit, and I believe in the power of the people. I believe in the power of the people to do things that were previously deemed impossible. Against unmeasurable odds, I have seen communities stand up against immovable objects and have seen them move. And particularly at a time when people say that things can't change, that there's nothing that can be done, we have seen it happen just in the last few weeks. There's a power in the people that walk and live and fight together, because reality is that none of us are free until we are all free. And one of the things that has been most significant about today is that we have intentionally drawn on the strength, on the spirit, on the courage of our ancestors, of so many who have made ways out of no ways, so many who still whisper in our ears how they fought for freedom and how they made it over. And I also stand before you grounded in the spirit of Jesus, the revolutionary. Grounded in the spirit of Jesus, the freedom fighter, Jesus, the brown-skinned Palestinian who had an explicit commitment to the rejected and exploited by the system. We are the many. Somos más y no tenemos miedo. Somos más y no tenemos miedo. You see, in my tradition, we believe that when 2 or 3 are gathered, that there is power, that there is love, and that there is transformation. And today we have an opportunity to continue to build on movements that decided to come together to build across lines of difference, to create a world that we want to live, because the truth is that the only way we beat white supremacy is not with more hate, but it is more with solidarity. You see, Chairman Fred Hampton said that you don't beat racism with racism, you beat racism with solidarity. And today I just want to expand that and say we don't beat white supremacy in isolation, we beat it together. We've been fighting for basic human rights and dignity, for just jobs, for real affordable housing. For real affordable housing.
Everybody in the center. Venezuela.